Hello and welcome to Cooking the Books with Heather. Today we're going to be making something that we haven't made yet from Deep Run Roots. We're going to be making foolproof grits. Now I'm making it for a different recipe, so I'm making a double batch, but method is still the same. I just needed to use my largest pans and bowls to fit everything in. So I've got a rigged up double boiler here. This is my largest pan with a couple inches of water on the bottom, and then a heat-proof bowl set on top where the water does not touch the bottom of the bowl. And she does this because she cooks grits entirely in milk, which means that it would be more likely to burn, more likely to boil over if you used another method. But with this, hopefully it won't, but it's gonna take a while. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. I have the milk measured out in my bowl already. I have my water coming up to a boil underneath at medium high on my stove. And all I have to do right now is add my grits. So I'm gonna add all of the grits right now and just into this. And I'm going to stir them in with my whisk just to get them mixed in. And she says, okay, so Vivian says to buy grits that only have like 1 or 2 ingredients. The fewer ingredients, the better. I found some stone ground white corn grits or at least, Echo, stop. So I found some stone ground, or at least my husband found some stone ground white corn grits at the grocery store, and they only have corn. That's 1 ingredient, so this is perfect. But she says now that we have the grits in here, we should skim off the hulls that are on the top. I've never done this in my life, but I'm sure that will make it a nicer, maybe prettier, I don't know. But so I'm using just a fine strainer and just trying to get the stuff off the top, as much of it as I can. I usually don't bother, and it's fine, but we're gonna do it the way she says. Today, get as much as I can out of there at least. Most of the grits are on the bottom still because it's not warm and it's not starting to thicken up yet, but so this must be just the hulls is what she says. All right, that'll be enough for me. Can't get all of them, but I've gotten most of it. So I'm just gonna put this to the side and not trip over my dog.
She bumped the camera earlier, but it's fine.
Okay. All right. So basically, this is just going to be a really long process of whisking this occasionally until, just to keep it from clumping up too much, until it's done, which will be anywhere from 20 to 35 minutes, I think she says. Let me check. Yeah, 25 to 40 minutes of whisking this occasionally and just making sure that it doesn't, I don't know, stick, burn, that it's cooking evenly. So this is going to be going for a while, and we're probably going to get started on the rest of our meal because we are making this to go with shrimp and grits. So hopefully you'll come back and watch me make that. But I'll show you what these look like when they're done. There is another step to this. grits are not good unless they are salted and preferably buttered. So we'll be doing that later when they are cooked. So we'll be back in 25 to 40 minutes. Okay. My grits are pretty much done. They're nice and thick. It has taken on almost all of the milk. As she says, the grits are nice and swollen and have taken on all of the milk. And now we need to add salt, butter, and pepper. And that is it for this recipe. Let me turn this off for a second because it's just very loud. Okay, so I need to remember I'm doing a double batch because grits really need a lot of salt. I know that seems like a lot, but grits are not good unless they're salted enough. Some pepper. And then we have some butter. And I'm going to get at this point, your bowl is hot. I'm going to turn this down a lot so it's warm but not boiling. And now I used unsalted butter. So I put some unsalted butter in there with our salt so that, you know, we don't have to account for the salted butter with our salt. That's usually what chefs do. Now, if these are too thick for your liking, you can always add a little bit of water, a little bit more milk, a little bit of cream, whatever you like to thin them out. It really just depends. I like my grits kind of thick, but they thicken up really quick as they cool off. So what I'm gonna do is probably put some foil over this, put it on my back burner, maybe if I can make it fit there, and just let it sit until we are ready to eat them. In fact, but let me taste it real quick to see if I think there's enough salt. 1 second. All right. This is the taste. Pretty good. I think they're salty enough, especially since we're going to be putting a sauce on top of them. I might go ahead and add a little bit of water here because they are pretty thick and I know that they will thicken up as they stand. So that's something that you probably want to adjust right before you eat them. Adjust them to the thickness that you prefer. Just add a little bit more water or milk or whatever. I think I neglected to say I use whole milk for this. You can probably use whatever milk you prefer. And you can always cook them in just water. Usually I cook them in half milk, half water, and I don't bother with the whole double boiler method. But these are really creamy, really delicious dairy flavor. And just cook them to the way you like them. If you haven't had grits before, try it exactly the way she says. She does have a good description of when they're done, the way they should form on the plate. So you know if they're too thick or too thin. But yeah, I'm just gonna add a little bit more water and let them sit until we are ready. On this episode of Cooking the Books with Heather, you watched me make Foolproof grits from Vivian Howard's Deep Run Roots cookbook. And I actually had to make a double batch for the other recipe that I was making. Honestly, it was probably a little bit too much for what we had, but we made it work. But the problem with making a double batch of this is that you need a really big bowl because you make these in a double boiler, which I don't have. And I am guessing that a lot of people don't own an actual double boiler. It's easy to rig one up with a heat-proof bowl over a pot that will hold it, as you saw me do. It was fiddly. This is a much more difficult grits recipe than I think grits have to be. But I understand why she did it this way, because she cooks them in just milk, and milk will boil over and burn very easily if you just do this in a standard pot. That said, I don't think we preferred our grits made with just milk. When I make them myself, we are Southern. I do make grits regularly. I never use a recipe, whatever. But I make them with half water and half milk. And that makes them creamy, but not overly heavy. I felt like these they were very dairy forward. They tasted a lot like milk and less like grits, in my opinion. A lot of recipes for shrimp and grits will have you add cheese and a lot of butter. There's a little bit of butter in this, but we'll have you add cheese and butter and those kinds of things into the grits to give them a little bit more flavor. This didn't need that. This has a lot of flavor on its own, and it is very dairy forward. So as a recipe, it's not that difficult, but for grits, I think it's much more fiddly than it has to be, and the result is not what we generally prefer our grits to be. Now, if you've never had grits before, I think you would love these grits. Don't try them from a diner or a greasy spoon or a place that doesn't put a lot of cream in them, cream and butter and enough salt, because you won't like them, because grits need salt. And in my opinion, they need a little bit of milk, a little bit of cream to make them nice and creamy. And this definitely has that. So if you've not had grits before, this is a great starter recipe. It's just a little bit more fiddly because of the double boiler. So I probably won't make these again, but it's nice to know that this works. And if I decide that I'm looking for this particular flavor profile, I will turn to this method. But there are better ways, in my opinion, to make grits that we like. So if you enjoyed watching me make this, please give me a thumbs up, hit the like button, same thing, hit the subscribe button, and come back and watch me make something else.